A wavelength is defined as the distance from any point in one cycle to the corresponding point in a neighboring cycle. In equations, wavelength is often represented as a lambda. One of the most important aspects of defining a wavelength is understanding that it is dependent upon two factors: the frequency of the vibration and the velocity of sound wave propagation in the medium, which can be a solid, liquid, gas, or anything in between. A great example for visualizing wavelength and its relationship to frequency is by simply using your finger to create waves in a small pan of water. For example, the higher the frequency your finger dips into the pan, the more waves will be created. Wavelength and frequency have an inverse relationship. This means that the length of the wavelength will go down as the frequency goes up, and the length of the wavelength will go up as the frequency goes down. The medium a sound is created in also impacts wavelength. For example, a wavelength will be longer in water than in air, and even longer in a solid, such as a wall. Now we should discuss some common misconceptions about wavelength. The period and wavelength of a wave are similar, but still pretty different. A wave's period is the time it takes for a wave to complete one full cycle. The period of a wave is usually expressed in seconds. The wave's wavelength, on the other hand, refers to the physical distance sound travels during one period. Wavelength is usually expressed in meters. The wavelength and period of a wave are directly connected, meaning that as the period of a wave increases, so does the wavelength. Although a wave's wavelength and period are directly related, wavelength and frequency are inversely related. This means that sounds with higher frequencies produce shorter wavelengths and vice versa. The concepts of wavelengths can be understood in a real-world sense by observing how waves move about. High-frequency waves with short wavelengths travel in a more straight, direct path. However, low-frequency waves with long wavelengths are able to move more easily, to change paths, and travel around corners and through manipulated spaces. Higher frequencies that have shorter wavelengths tend to reflect off barriers. To recap, a wavelength is defined as the distance from any point in one cycle to the corresponding point in a neighboring cycle. We hope you learned more about wavelengths and their importance to sounds in our daily lives.